What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel and welcome back to our video. Today I'm taking a look at the entry list for the 2024 Straight Talk Wireless 400 at Homestead Miami Speedway. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. We're going to start to talk about the one car for Trackhouse Racing. This course will be driven by Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain's coming off finishing in the top 10 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway and recovering from a speeding penalty. Now, Ross, of course, has won a mile and a half so far this year, that being, of course, at Kansas a couple weeks ago. He looks to continue that momentum from the last few weeks and looks to win his second race of 2024 and potentially pick up career win number 6 this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Up next, how about the 2 car for Team Penske? This will once again be driven by Austin Cindric. Austin Cindric had a pretty alright run before, unfortunately getting caught up in an incident in the middle portion of the event, showed some really solid speed. Cindric's been not that great here at Homestead in the NASCAR Cup Series, though he's shown some stuff in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in the past. He looks for a really strong run this weekend and looks to continue the momentum that he's had at times and looks for a really great run this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway in the 2 car. Up next, how about the 3 car for Richard Childress Racing? This will once again be driven by Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon's looking to have a turnaround week after unfortunately getting dumped by Daniel Hemrick in the early portion at Las Vegas. Austin Dillon's been mediocre at times so far this year. Yes, he did get that win at Richmond, but that was a very controversial finish. He looks to get the final 3 races underway and looks to have a really strong run. We'll see what he can do this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, how about the 4 car for Stewart-Haas Racing? This will once again be driven by Josh Berry. This 4 car has had quite a bit of success in the past at Homestead Miami Speedway, as Kevin Harvick did win in this car back in 2014. And Josh Berry's been okay at intermediate tracks, but he's also been solid here in the NASCAR Xfinity Series as well. He's looking for a really solid run this weekend, looking to close out the year on a really strong note before he heads over to the Wood Brothers in 2024. He's looking for a really strong and a really great run and maybe a top 10 run possibly this weekend at Homestead. Up next, how about the 5 car for Hendrick Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson's coming off having not the greatest run at Las Vegas after multiple pit road issues throughout the event. He's still recovered to finish in 11th at Las Vegas. He's looking really strong, though, going through the rest of the class, and Kyle Larson's going to one of his best tracks, as he did win at this track in 2022 and was really fast in this race last year before unfortunately crashing in the sand barrels. He's looking for a really strong run this week and looking to get his 7th win of the year, which will also, of course, be his 30th career NASCAR Cup Series win. He'll be looking to get it done for sure this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, how about the 6 car for RFK Racing? This will once again be driven by Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski, I don't believe, has won here in the Homestead in the NASCAR Cup Series, but I do think he's got a couple of NASCAR Xfinity Series wins here. And Brad Keselowski on the intermediate so far this year has honestly not been that bad and showed some really good speed. He also did win at Darlington back early in the year. He's looking for a really strong run this weekend and looking to pick up a 2nd win in 2024, which would be his 37th career NASCAR Cup Series win. He looks to get it done this weekend for sure at Homestead. Up next, I'll have the 7 car for Syer Motorsports. This will once again be driven by Justin Haley. Justin Haley showed a lot of speed last weekend in Las Vegas for unfortunately losing a little bit of ground throughout the event, but did have top 10 speed early in the race. He lost a little bit out on the strategy, but is looking for a really good run at Homestead. Syer's been showing a lot of speed near the end of the year, and of course we'll have Rodney Childers in 2025. He looks to have a really strong run and a really great finish, hopefully for sure, this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway in the 7. Up next, how about the 8 car for Richard Childress Racing? This will once again be driven by Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch is coming off having not the best run at Vegas, where he finished inside the top 20, but only was barely inside the top 10 at points. He's looking to get his, I believe, his 2nd or 3rd ever win at Homestead in the NASCAR Cup Series. He's shown some speed here in the past, and R-Star's had solid intermediate runs, so we'll see what Kyle Busch can do for sure this weekend in the number 8 car this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, how about the 9 car for Hendrick Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott's been alright at Homestead Miami Speedway in the past. He did almost win here in the Cup Series back in 2020, but he hasn't been the greatest at this track in the next-gen era. He's looking to have a turnaround after unfortunately crashing out last weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He'll be looking for that turnaround. I do think that Chase Elliott has a solid chance and opportunity to run really well for sure this weekend in that number 9 car at Homestead. Up next, how about the 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing? This one's going to be driven by Noah Gragson. Noah Gragson, I expect to have one of his better runs. He's been really good here in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He won here, of course, in 2022 in Xfinity and also won a couple other times or came close to winning a few other times in Xfinity before. I think Noah Gragson could honestly have a chance at a top 10 this weekend with the speed that he's shown here in the past. I look for Noah Gragson to be really solid and pretty quietly having a good run for sure before he heads over to front row in 2025. Up next, how about the 11 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? This one's going to be driven by Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin historically has been pretty good at Homestead Miami Speedway. He's won here a couple times, won here back, I believe, in 2009, and also won here in 2013, and also 2020 as well. I think Denny Hamlin could honestly have a really good run if he doesn't have the tire issue like he had at the end of the event and break something on the car. I do think that if they can show that speed, it'll be really good. We'll see what Denny Hamlin can do for sure this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, how about the 12th car for Team Penske? This one's going to be driven by Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney did not have the best start to the round of 8, unfortunately, after having a practice crash and also, unfortunately, getting caught up in a wreck that was caused by Elliott, Reick, and a couple other drivers. He's looking for a turnaround run. He's been okay at this track and was really fast in this race last year. I do think Ryan Blaney could be looking for a really strong run and looking for a turnaround. We'll see what he can do this weekend for sure at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, how about the 14 car for Stewart-Haas Racing? This one's going to be driven by Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe has, of course, been really solid here in the NASCAR Xfinity Series as he won this track, I believe, in 2020. Briscoe has shown some speed at times, but also has had a lot of bad luck near the end of the year. He's looking to really have a good race this weekend. We'll see what he can do, and we'll see if Stewart-Haas Racing can bring the speed that they've shown at times throughout the 2024 season. Up next, how about the 15 car for Rick Ware Racing? This one's going to be driven by Kaz Grala, who will likely make one of his final starts at Rick Ware in 2024. Kaz Grala has been a little inconsistent at times in this car, and I feel like that the 51's been a lot better at times than that number 15 car. I think Kaz is looking for a good run. There was a chance Elliott could have gotten this car, but I do think that Kaz Grala could run really, really well, and we'll see what it can do with the number 15 car for sure this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, how about the 16 car for Colleague Racing? This one's going to be driven by AJ Allmendinger, who have Worldwide Express as a sponsor for the weekend. Last weekend, Shane Van Gisbergen was behind the wheel of this car, and it ended up finishing in 29th. AJ's honestly been really good here in the NASCAR Cup Series. Had a couple top 5 and top 10 runs. I do think AJ will have one of his better runs of 2024 in the Cup Series as he looks to get another top 10 potentially this year in 2024. Up next, how about the 17 car for RFK Racing? This one's going to be driven by Chris Buescher. Chris Buescher's had a pretty good year despite the fact he did not make the playoffs in 2024. But he did get that win not too long ago at Watkins Glen. He's looking to get his second win of the year. He did almost win near in 2015 in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I do think that Chris Buescher will have some really solid and pretty strong speed, and I expect him to be pretty fast for sure this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, how about the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? This one's going to be driven by Martin Truex Jr. Martin Truex Jr. had some pretty good speed last year at this race, but unfortunately, I think he had a tire issue or an engine failure near the end of the event. I think that Martin Truex Jr. is honestly going to be somewhat of a contender. He had really good speed at Las Vegas. He was also fast at Kansas a few weekends ago. I think that Martin Truex Jr. will have a pretty good run, as also will be running a pretty awesome paint scheme in the next couple weeks as well, most likely at Phoenix. Up next, how about the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? This one's going to be driven by Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell won last year at Homestead Miami Speedway and probably was going to win in Vegas and was one lap away from getting it done after fuel mileage. But I like Christopher Bell's chances this weekend. He's been really good at this track in the past. He's been good in Xfinity, especially in the past. And I do think that Christopher Bell will have the speed and pace for sure to contend this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, how about the 21 car for the Wood Brothers? This one's going to be driven by Harrison Burton. Harrison Burton actually had one of his better runs of 2024, but he's looking to end year off on a really solid note before he heads over, of course, to AIM Racing and takes over the 15 car from Hailie Deegan going into next year. He's looking for a really strong run. If they could just bring that same pace and speed they had last week, he might have a chance for sure to maybe get a top 15 for sure this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, how about the 22 car for Team Penske? This will once again be driven by Joey Logano. Joey Logano is sitting pretty as he has officially locked his way into the Championship 4 with the win at Las Vegas. And Joey Logano has won here before at Homestead back in 2018. Though I will say Logano in recent years has not been the strongest car at this track. I don't think Logano is going to be a major threat and contender, but his main focus now is not on this weekend, but focusing on trying to win a championship in a couple weekends from now at Phoenix in about 2 weekends from now, as a matter of fact. Up next, how about the 23 car for 2311 Racing? This will once again be driven by Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace won the pole last time or qualified inside the top 5 at Homestead last year, and Bubba's been pretty good at intermediates in his next-gen career or in the Cup Series with 2311. I think Bubba's got a good chance for another top 10. He's had a career year so far with 6 top 5s and 13 top 10s. I think he's got a good chance to get his 7 top 5 and maybe his 14 top 10 finish in 2024. I think it'll be pretty fast for sure this weekend at Homestead. Up next, how about the 24 car for Hendrick Motorsports? This will once again be driven by William Byron. William Byron's coming off having another very impressive run at Vegas where he finished inside the top 5. His last 4 finishes, second, 3rd, and 4th, I believe. He's been so consistent recently, has shown some really great pace and speed, and I do think that William Byron, who of course did win at this track back in 2021, I could definitely see William Byron having a chance and opportunity to get his 4th win of the season for sure this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway with the 24 team. Up next, how about the 31 car for Kaulig Racing? This will once again be driven by Daniel Hemrick. Like I said with Daniel Hemrick talking about Austin Dillon, he unfortunately got into an incident with Austin Dillon this past weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Daniel Hemrick's been alright this year. He's had some okay performances, but we all know that Ty Dillon will be taking over this car as the 31 does get renumbered to the number 10 going into 2025. I do think Daniel Hemrick has a decent chance and opportunity to maybe somehow get a top 20 perhaps. He's shown some speed on the intermediates. I do think Hemrick could have a solid run for sure this weekend at Homestead. Up next, how about the 34 car for Front Row Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell is looking to end the year off on a really strong note before he heads over to Syer Motorsports and takes over the 71 car next year. He's shown some speed at times on intermediates and has qualified pretty solidly on these types of tracks this year. But I'm not expecting McDowell to be a major factor and contender to go to victory lane. He looks to have a really strong run this weekend and continue helping build Front Row before he leaves the organization at the end of the 2024 season. Up next, how about the 38 car for Front Row Motorsports? This will once again be driven by Todd Gillan. He started off very, very well and looked really good in the regular season, but the last couple weeks, his 38 team has just been a little bit off for me, sadly. But I do think that if there's a driver who really can turn it around, it is Todd Gillan. His future is not in question. He, of course, will be driving for Front Row once again, but of course, his team is part of the charter lawsuit going on at the moment. But his future is not in question. He'll be sticking around a 38 car, but looks to run really well for sure in that 38 car for sure this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, how about the 41 car for Stewart-Haas Racing? This will once again be driven by Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece showed some really solid speed last week at Las Vegas where he had top 10 speed, and honestly he's been solid here at Homestead back in Xfinity and also in the Truck Series as well. I think that Ryan Preece could be looking for another top 10 potentially. I know it's been a little inconsistent at times throughout the 2024 campaign, but I do think if there's a driver who can continue showing a lot of stuff, it definitely is Ryan Preece. I look for him to have a decent run for sure this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, how about the 42 car for Legacy Motor Club? This will once again be driven by John Hunter Nemechek. Now, John Hunter, there was a lot of talk about him on social media about his future being in question, but I think Nemechek probably will be fine going into 2025. He needs to continue running as well as he did. He did get a top 10 this past weekend at Las Vegas, a much-needed turnaround run after a struggle so far this year. He looks to continue that strength he's had the last few weeks and looks for a really good run for sure once again this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway in the 42. Up next, how about the 43 car for Legacy Motor Club? This will once again be driven by Erik Jones. Erik Jones was very mediocre this past weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and it's been a little bit a disappointing season for Erik Jones in 2024. He's looking to bounce back in, and of course, he did have the injury, which I think unfortunately affected him sadly, but I do think that this is a track where he can definitely turn it around. He's been solid here in the past, so I do think that Erik Jones could have a chance and opportunity. We'll see what he can do with Ben Bayshore being the crew chief, and we'll see what kind of speed that Erik Jones can show for sure this weekend at Homestead. He looks for a solid run and campaign for sure. Up next, up with the 44 car for NY Racing. This will once again be driven by JJ Yeley, who will likely make his final Cup start of 2024. I don't expect this team to be majorly fast, but I will say they showed some decent speed not too long ago. I think they ran Kansas or another race, and they actually showed some really solid speed a few weekends ago. I can see this team maybe getting a top 30. If they could bring the pace and speed they had a couple weekends ago at the other tracks, I could see JJ Yeley showing up and maybe having an okay run, which JJ is a veteran of the sport and he knows how to help organizations, and he's done a solid job so far this year. Up next, up with the 45 car for 2311 Racing. This will once again be driven by Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick's looking for a bounce back weekend. He unfortunately ended up crashing out and flipping upside down and is pretty much in a must-win situation going into the final few races. Luckily, Tyler Reddick is going to one of his best racetracks, and I do believe that Tyler Reddick will be a major factor to get it done. He's looking to get his first win since Michigan not too long ago. He looks to have a really strong run. I do think that Tyler Reddick, despite the lawsuit going on with this organization, I do think that Tyler Reddick will have a pretty solid and good performance for sure this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway with the 45 team. Up next, up with the 47 car for JTG Doherty Racing. This will once again be driven by Ricky Stenhouse Jr. In the Xfinity Series, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. actually was pretty good at this racetrack, was super consistent, and I think nearly won a couple times at this racetrack as well. And Stenhouse, of course, has already won this season, as he did win at Talladega about 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, I should say. I think that Stenhouse is honestly looking to maybe continue the momentum. This team doesn't know what their future is. A little bit in question currently at the moment on the ownership side of things, as both the JTG owners of the team have left to go to Joe Gibbs Racing. Stenhouse looks to kind of put that on the back burner and run really well this weekend at Homestead. Up next, up with the 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports. This will once again be driven by Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman, it's a shame he's not in the round of 8, because Alex Bowman has been super consistent so far this year. He's been very impressive in these playoffs and has looked really, really good. He's really put everything on the back burner, and it's a shame to see that disqualification cost him a shot at getting a championship, because he's been so good this year. He's been all right at Homestead in the past. I could see him maybe being a solid contender to get a really good finish for sure this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, up with the 51 car for Rick Ware Racing. This will once again be driven by Cory Le Joy. Cory Le Joy is coming off finishing inside the top 15 this past weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway and is looking for a really good run and continuing to build up momentum. We don't know what his future is at the moment for 2025, though we do think most likely he will be behind the wheel of the number 51 car going into next year. He's looking to continue that momentum, help Rick Ware Racing continue their growth going into the 2025 campaign. We'll see what he can do, and we'll see what speed he can bring to the organization this weekend at Homestead Miami. Up next, up with the 54 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This will once again be driven by Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs had a lot of race-winning speed this past weekend at Las Vegas, but unfortunately had multiple spins and got a little damage and finished 3 laps down. We're going a pretty good track for Ty Gibbs. He's been solid here in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and I think had some speed last year in this race as well, if I'm not mistaken. He is still looking for his first career NASCAR Cup Series win. I think he's got an outside chance and opportunity, though I do expect the playoff guys to be a lot better than Ty Gibbs this weekend at Homestead Miami. Up next, up with the 6.6 car for MBM Motorsports. This will once again be driven by Chad Fincham. Chad Fincham is going to have some really cool sponsorship for this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway, though I don't expect this car to be very, very fast and probably be putting around the racetrack. We'll see what it can do, but I don't expect much from Chad Fincham this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Up next, up with the 71 car for Syer Motorsports. This will once again be driven by Zayn Smith. Zayn Smith is another driver that's future currently in question. We do think he's so likely going to front row in 2025, but obviously with the charter lawsuit going on, it has affected this organization because they haven't been able to expand him going there next year. But Zayn's been very impressive the second half of this season. He's got like a 16th-place average finish in the last 16 or 17 races and has shown so much improvement throughout the year. He's looking for another really solid and pretty good performance for sure this weekend at Homestead. Up next, up with the 77 car for Syer Motorsports. This will once again be driven by Carson Hocevar. Now, Carson Hocevar is a winner at Homestead in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, where he won last year and got to the championship 4. I think Carson's looking for another top 10 run. He's shown a lot of really impressive runs throughout the year. Yes, he's kind of rubbed a lot of feathers and rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but I do think if there's a driver who continue showing improvement like he has, I think Carson Hocevar is the guy. He looks to have a really good run this weekend at Homestead. And finally, let's talk about the 99 car for Trackhouse Racing. This will once again be driven by Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez played the fuel mileage game at Vegas and finished inside the top 5. But I will say Suarez, a lot of these playoffs, has shown some really good speed. And it gives me a little bit of confidence and hope for Suarez going into 2025, which is going to be a contract year as his future is in question after this year. It really depends on how Connor Zilisch does in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with JRM. We'll see what Suarez can do as he looks to have a really strong and great performance this weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. So, that is going to be for the intros video for the 2024 Straight Talk Wireless 400 at Homestead. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support and Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What are your thoughts about the intros video? Let me know it in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel or later today, you'll see the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race picks for the Baptist Health 200 at Homestead. You're also tomorrow going to see NASCAR news video discussing news over the course of the last couple of days, and you're also going to see some other great content drop, including Xfinity race picks. Thursday, we'll have race picks for the Straight Talk Wireless 400 and the paint scheme video as well, and we got a lot of awesome and great content dropping this week. Maybe Carl Edwards will talk about him as well again. You might see that on the channel. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, buddy.